Inside the employee dormitory of a meat processing plant, a sudden large-scale food poisoning incident occurred. Strangely, however, the factory does not provide 3 meals a day. The food eaten by the shift drivers was also not the same. Because of this, medical worker Anya suspected this was related to their working environment. After inspecting the trucks they used for transporting goods, Anya found that many remnants of uncleaned, decaying meat remained in the trucks. She then approached the drivers to inquire and learned that the meat plant had not disposed of waste properly. Instead, they secretly and illegally dumped it in a forest outside the city. After getting the exact location from the drivers, before going to investigate, Anya searched for related information online and found a video blogger who had previously posted about the factory's illegal dumping. This blogger, named Sophia, had gone with the chief of Deka village to see the meat factory's waste pit. There, rotting meat was piled up like a mountain, giving off waves of foul stench. Seeing this, Anya immediately took her assistant to Deka village to investigate. By a stroke of luck, when they arrived, they happened to meet the village chief of Deka. Since she didn't know the exact location of the waste pit, Anya asked the village chief to lead her there. But halfway there, a gunshot suddenly echoed through the village. It turns out that shortly after they left, a village woman approached the assistant, saying her daughter had been running a high fever. But after examining her, the assistant suspected she might have a contagious illness. The villagers, however, didn't believe him, and even clashed with him over it. When Anya arrived, she went inside to examine the situation, with the village chief's permission. It was only then that she realized that the sick person was none other than a blogger named Sophia. At this point, she not only had a high fever, but her body was covered in pustules. After setting up some simple isolation measures, Anya asked Sophia's mother to temporarily leave the house. But the mother believed Anya's warning about the contagious disease was just fear-mongering. She didn't take his words to heart. With no other choice, Anya called the virus center for support. But then he realized his phone had no signal. The ambulance they arrived in had also unexpectedly broken down. With no other option, Anya put on protective gear and gathered all the villagers. In an open area, he disclosed that Sophia had contracted a contagious disease. To prevent other villagers from catching the virus, he urged everyone to stay indoors for self-isolation to avoid cross-infection. Sadly, the stubborn villagers didn't believe a word he said and thought Anya was a fraud. In the end, the village chief stepped in to calm things down, sending everyone back to their homes quietly. Then, the chief took Anya to an abandoned medical station to see if they could find any useful supplies there. Meanwhile, the ambulance was restarted with the help of 2 villagers. When Anya heard the sound and came over, his assistant, fearing infection, had driven it far off. But Anya didn't blame him, since one person alone was enough to go back for help. However, after that, when Anya went to check on Sophia's condition, he found that she was no longer at home. Sophia's mother had let her daughter go outside for fresh air, believing that nature was the best healer. When Anya finally found Sophia at the village entrance, her condition had rapidly worsened. Meanwhile, the assistant in the ambulance finally connected with the virus center. But just as he was about to say Deka village, a car with high beams on came straight at him. Blinded by the bright lights, the assistant tried to swerve, but unfortunately got into an accident. Not long after, while Anya was tending to Sophia, he heard a loud horn outside. When he stepped out, he saw the village residents had gathered together, ready to hold an engagement banquet. The groom's family had even driven over for it. Anya tried to step forward to stop it, but the people ignored him completely. Seeing the joyful smiles on their faces, Anya could only turn away helplessly, only to be surprised to see his assistant standing there, looking innocent. It turned out the family involved in the accident with his assistant was actually the groom's family. To make it in time for the engagement banquet, they brought the assistant back to Deka village with them. Afraid of being scolded by Anya, the assistant lied, saying he had already notified the virus center. But just then, as the engagement celebration was in full swing, an unexpected incident occurred. A man suddenly collapsed to the ground for no reason. Seeing this, Anya rushed over to check and found that the man's arm was also covered with those same pustules. Only at this point did the villagers start to believe what Anya had said about the disease. They quickly returned to their homes. Meanwhile, the virus center incidentally received the message from the assistant. While they understood there was a contagious disease, they had no idea which village it had affected. So, Ivan bought a sample of meat from the market and sent it to the testing center. Though no virus was found in this piece of beef, the testing showed that the sample from the meat plant was from a different batch than what was sold in the market. Upon receiving these results, Ivan immediately went to the meat plant's owner, who claimed that all the waste meat was handled by a contractor. They had terminated the contract 2 days prior and had no idea how the contractor disposed of the waste. But when Ivan showed him the test report as a warning, the owner, with no other choice, revealed the illegal dumping site of the meat plant. With the exact address in hand, Ivan immediately sent 2 colleagues to Deka village. Meanwhile, with the assistant's help, Anya had already transferred the 2 infected patients to the abandoned aid station. for quarantine. He then conducted temperature checks on all the villagers and marked each household's door. During this process, Anya suddenly spotted the village chief's family, preparing to leave in the distance. The chief, fearing infection for his family, had decided to take them away from the village. Although none of them showed any signs of infection yet, there was no guarantee they weren't carriers of the virus. When Anya blocked their way, the chief explained he was only taking them to their house on the mountaintop and wouldn't interact with others. Ignoring Anya's advice, they left right away. Not long after, the chief's family passed by a hunter's house. When the chief went inside, he found the hunter, already infected, had died there. Terrified, the chief hurried out and took his family onward. What he didn't know was that his wife was starting to feel unwell, with pustules appearing on her arm. However, instead of telling her family, she covered her arm with clothing. Meanwhile, the two virus center workers also arrived in Deka village. Before treatment could even begin, Sophia had already died on the hospital bed. Upon learning this, the villagers were seized with extreme panic and tried to flee the area. But by then, the military, having been informed, dispatched a large force to completely lock down the village. Because the virus center couldn't confirm the mode of transmission of the disease, they encircled the village with barbed wire, prohibiting all movement in or out. They also deployed numerous workers to disinfect every corner of the area. In addition, the illegal dumping pit of the meat plant was located, and workers began emergency handling of the piles of rotting meat. Large numbers of birds that fed on the decayed meat were circling above the pit. Just as everyone was stunned by this sight, the sharp-eyed Anya unexpectedly spotted an animal collar among the decayed meat. She immediately recalled that during her inspection of Sophia's personal items, she had seen a photo on Sophia's phone of Sophia with a stray dog, and that very dog wore this collar. The stray dog had this collar around its neck. Following this lead, the virus center staff examined Sophia's body and indeed found a dog bite mark on Sophia's right leg. This indicated Sophia was likely infected through this dog bite. Upon thoroughly searching the surroundings, they eventually found the stray dog from the photo in a household not far from the village. The homeowner, however, had already died of the disease. Moreover, workers also found numerous dead animals in a nearby river. Even more worrying was that this river downstream passed through several densely populated cities. To prevent the uncontrolled spread of this contagious disease, Anya immediately contacted her superiors to request an expansion of the quarantine area.